Almighty God, we come before you this afternoon to call on you to bless this council and all who are engaged in the work of local government in our city. Grant that we may order all things in wisdom, righteousness, and peace, to the honor of your name and the good of your people who dwell in this city. Amen.
Amen.
Good afternoon, councillors, management, members of the Fourth Estate, and interested residents. In my brief remarks this afternoon, I want to touch on negative and positive. Let's deal with the negative first of all. We are all conscious, unfortunately, of developments which have affected this council even in the last month regarding corruption, allegations of corruption. And I need to restate this afternoon what I said when I and all of us were inaugurated. That my approach, and I know it's shared by the vast majority of you, is that as a council we adopt an absolutely zero tolerance approach to corruption. If any of us are involved in corrupt acts, my hope is that the rule of law will prevail, that the authorities will move with vigor and expedite any investigation. Because corruption is a cancer which undermines our work, which is a betrayal of everything that residents and citizens voted us into this office for. And so all of us need to adopt a similar stance of absolute zero tolerance to it. And I call on all of us to recommit ourselves to that lofty principle. Doesn't matter how good we are technically, doesn't matter how wealthy we are, doesn't matter what connections we have. If we don't run the affairs of this council with absolute integrity, then we will not achieve the goals and act in the best interests of residents. Let me turn to a positive note. I'm sure all of you will have seen in the course of the last week the tremendous achievement of No Violet Bulawayo, one of our own daughters, a prolific writer, a celebrated writer who in the past week to 10 days has been awarded a significant prize by the Cain Literary Committee. And I spoke with the town clerk this past week. We need to recognize these iconic figures in our city who bring, and she brings double honor to us because her surname reflects our city. And yet she is someone who has achieved the pinnacles of fame internationally. And so my hope is that we will all applaud her, as I do now, for this further great achievement in the publication of this further literary work, which has taken the world by storm, and that in due course we might, as a city, recognize her in an appropriate way. But with those few words, I call upon the town clerk to commence our business.
Thank you, Your Worship. The councillors of the city of Bulawayo, management, esteemed stakeholders, ladies and gentlemen of the media. The legal question being confirmation of minutes of the ordinary meeting held on the 3rd of September 2025, attached as Annexure A, Status A to Q. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, town clerk. Do we have a proposer for those minutes? Anyone wish to propose them? Thank you. And a seconder? Thank you. Can I sign? This computer isn't working, so I'm going to put it Would the Chair of Future Water please present her report?
Your Worship, I move that the report of the Future Water Supplies and Water Action Committee meeting held on the 2nd of September 2025 as submitted be received and the various recommendations contained therein after be adopted. Yabo.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder for that? Thank you, ma'am. Is there any debate? What item, sir? 4? 5. Anyone before 5? You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, for the opportunity. It is of effect that as the city of Bulawayo, we failed to provide water to the residents of Bulawayo because of mega challenges, which we always note, challenges which are around the issue to do with the finance. But the impact of us failing to provide water has led to the closure of business industries and migration of people to other big cities and other countries. Meaning to say Bulawayo is suffering in terms of local economy, since there is no investor who would want to invest in a city that has no water. And this has been a challenge that we have been discussing about as a city, trying to find short and long-term solutions. But the problem that we are finding is money. And it's very painful that the government is expecting this city to perform miracles to fix the question of water, the short, the medium, and the long term, without funding. And I'm aware that your offices, Your Worship and Town Clerk, you have been trying to engage the government so that it can give an ear and an eye to the crisis of water shortage in Bulawayo. Yes, the response is not conducive enough for us to address the short-term problem that we have. That requires an amount of 900,000 United States dollars. And Your Worship, is very difficult that you as a parent, you can expect, how would you expect your child to pass at school when you don't supply or you buy textbooks or even pay fees? It's very difficult, but this is what the government is expecting us to do. And the most worrisome thing, Your Worship, is other cities are developing each and every day. If you travel to Harare, there are big projects there. Other ministries are developing very well. They even went to the extent of buying each other cars, which cost more than the amount that we need as a city. So I'm very much worried on the stance that the government is taking, especially on the issue of water. I wouldn't know what we did wrong as a city or as the resident to this government to the extent that they would ignore such a challenge that require only 900,000 United States dollars to address at least the short term. Whereas they have other monies to buy each other cars, which cost more than that money. So it's a very worrisome stance, and the residents have to be aware when this issue has created a conflict between the city council and the residents. In an assumption that you are failing to deliver water, they have to be aware that it's a question of money, and the city has no money. But we have a responsive Hulumende which has the coffers and money to address this question. But in our view, we feel like they don't want. So I was of a suggestion, Your Worship, that this technical team that you put there to be trying to research and come up with strategies on how to address this fundamental issue. I feel like we need a more stakeholder approach, especially to the government. If it means that you call upon the local ministries or ministers who stay here in Bulawayo, even the members of parliament, we have a multi-stakeholder conversation on how we can best put this issue into priority. Because there is no further explanation that we can do to the suffering people of Makokova who spend 5 days without water. whereas we are crying for just 900,000 United States dollars. So I was of a view that we need to convert all forces here in Laos if it happens, so that we have a conversation on how best they can address in their level of influence as ministers and as members of parliament to address in our airmen, because it cannot be a situation that we come here, we blame the management, we blame this council. There's no way they can perform miracles without water. So that was my suggestion, your worship, on this matter, and I feel like it's high time we take that approach so that we don't find ourselves in a permanent conflict with the residents of Laos. Thank you.
What item?
Same item. Thank you, Your Worship. I rise to speak on the same item because it is a matter of great concern, not only in my ward, but across all the residents of Ulawai. Your Worship, yesterday we were commissioning stands in Luveve and Mkanwini, and we have seen local subject plans and the master plan itself, which speaks to urban expansion and population growth in the city. And all that speaks to a greater demand for the city of Ulawai. If we are beginning to supply the residents of water now with the dams that are available, what more when all these other projects have been developed? I know it might sound like we sound like a stark record, but it's inevitable to speak to water, because water is a matter that is troublesome to all the residents of the city of Ulawai. Your Worship, we seem to have normalized an abnormality. It is abnormal for the city residents to live a whole week without water. It is unacceptable. And I, at this juncture, reimagine a Ulawai that used to have executive powers to develop its own dams. But we know what happened. That responsibility now lies with the ZIN. I also reimagine a Ulawai which had executive powers, administrative powers, and also fiscal devolution, where Ulawai could, do its own projects. But we know that we are hamstrung because of the present legislative overarching environment in which we operate. I say this because we know that ZINO must be in the forefront in all the projects that we are talking about. We have to have ZINO playing a leading role, but we know what is happening. We have Gwai Shangan as a lasting solution which has been touted by many, but we know what is happening. We are appreciative of the effort that ZINO is doing, but I think they are not doing enough. We know, of course, there are ministries involved there, the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Water, Resources and Development, the Ministry of Environment, the Ministry of Lands, Agriculture and Fisheries, and all the ministries that have to do with development of water. I want to make a passionate plea, Your Worship, today, a passionate plea to say we feel that Ulawai, like my colleague has said, Ulawai is being seriously neglected when it comes to bulk water development, because we know the bearing that it has on one, tourism and investment. It is actually a risky factor. To have water shortage in the city is a risky factor to investment. We are not going to attract investment. So it is a passionate plea to say, can we have government prioritize the development of the Gwai Shangani Dam? I know that with commitment of funds into that project, we can have a lasting solution. I would say that would be my submission.
Thank you. Is there any further debate? I do want to contribute to the debate. Councillor, what item?
A similar item. Yeah. Thank you very much, Your Worship. I think if we look at the immediate short-term, medium, and long-term projects, which are clearly stated here, I think some of the major challenges can be arrested through the figures which are stated here. Because if you scrutinize that table, Your Worship, and add the figures which are on the other side, it points to the issue of money. So I think it would be proper to approach the person who is in charge of treasury of this great nation to assist the city of Bulawayo. Because we see thousands, millions of dollars which are stated there. And if these things which are clearly illustrated on this table are funded, we will see an improvement to water supply, water delivery to the residents of this great city. So our major challenge, according to what is before us, the technical report which has been put before us, is the issue of money. The question is, how do we get that money? That is what is critical for this city. Because I see that there is no complaint here about shortage of water in the report on the table there. But they are pointing to areas which are affecting water delivery to our great city. And again, I would want to encourage your office, Your Worship, the office of the town clerk, the office of the chairperson of water, the official water, the office of the great engineer, the young engineer of this great city, chairman of environment, councillor secretary, to approach even the head of state and the minister in regard to this. We have been speaking about declaration of Bulawayo as a water shortage city, and that has been resolved, which we have not yet gone to the studio to record. But I think it's high time we need to make serious steps to approach the government of the day about finances. If we are given these monies or half of the money which is here, it may go a long way in arresting this problem. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you. Same points.
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to add on to what was already been said by other councillors. Your Worship, if you take note of the meetings that we have been having, full council meetings for the past 2 years since we elected, 90% of the times we're talking about water, sewer, and I think it all revolves around the issues of water. We're talking about Glasgow, we talked about Baishamani, but this year we were blessed enough to have rains. And as of now, like Councillor Mautu said, we don't have a challenge of raw water. But we can talk about dams, we can talk about everything, but for as long as we do not have the capacity as well to pump that water, then it basically means that these past 2 weeks, Worship, we have seen now going dry in most areas. My water project, with people going for 3 weeks, 4 weeks without water. The main challenge not being the fact that there is no water. Water is there, but the challenge is now the pumping. One of the factors which is probably not maybe listed on that is the issue of electricity. Other than the fact that we are having challenges with the pumps and not having enough funds and also not getting enough help from the government. The other challenge that we are also having is that we are also having challenges with ZESA, not prioritizing the areas where we need electricity for us to deliver water to the residents. So I also believe that there is serious need for us to engage the government, right from us seeking funds to repair our pumps, and also even engagements on what should be done for us to make sure that we have got enough electricity in areas where we need electricity. So I want to support and buttress what has already been said by the other councillors on the issue, one of funds, on the issues of electricity, so that at least we can then have a more complete set of from water to pumping to the residents, so that at least we can be able to deliver water. We might have more dams but without pumping and without electricity, we might not be able to deliver amanzi in Nyabo.
Thank you. If there's no further debate, I'd like to respond to this. My opening remark is this, that all of us have been through the budget consultation exercise in the last week or so. And there's a broad consensus, thankfully, amongst our residents. And as I mentioned yesterday at the commissioning of stands at Luveve North, in that budget consultation exercise, our number one priority is water. We have a broad consensus between management and ourselves and amongst the residents. We understand that as a city, this is our number one priority. We also understand a second fact, and this touches on the national issue. This is the only city in the entire country that faces a shortage of raw water and the need of the construction of not just dams, but other facilities. If we look, for example, at Harare, we can see that Kunzwi Dam is almost complete. They have now started working on the pipeline from Kunzwi Dam, and they are proceeding apace with that. So this is an issue which is being addressed in other centers. It is not an issue being addressed here. Going forward, I would focus on 4 issues which are summed up in this report. They are the short-term goals, the medium-term goals, the long-term goals, and then finally the 4th issue is the issue of the authorities, so that we ensure that we have a functional authority which can manage our water resources going forward. But let's talk firstly about the short-term goals. This report makes it very clear what those short-term goals are, and critical to our short-term goals is the upgrading of the Ngema pump station, the upgrading of the pipeline, particularly between Ngema and Tuli, the upgrading of the pipelines between Mchabez and Umzingwani, the upgrading of the pipeline between Insiza and Ngema. All of this is contained in this report, and it is relatively cheap to do. Now, if I could touch on, I think it was Councillor Mabuto, who said, can we reach out to government? The fact is, on these short-term issues, we have reached out to government. In fact, the Minister of Finance last year gave undertakings. It was also the Minister of Water, Dr. Anxious Masuka, who set up the technical committee last year, which comprised technical experts from NUST and other quarters and our own water engineers. And this, what we have in our report today, is the product of their work. So there's no dispute between us and government regarding the short-term work that needs to be done. And your point, Sir Councillor, is correct. In the short term, because we've had decent rain, we do have at present sufficient raw water. Our problem is the inadequate ability that we have to pump that water. And that is complicated by what is happening with ZESA. As we know from our own engineers, in the last few weeks, the reason residents, particularly in high-density suburbs, have gone for such long periods of time is not because of the lack of raw water, but our inability to be able to pump that water from Ngema up to Criterion and Tuli. Now, the town clerk knows, management knows, that a critical component in this is actually the provision of solar energy down at Ngema. We have a long-standing contract that we entered into with Williams Engineering, which has never been implemented, and there's interest from other quarters. When we all went, Engineer Kwanele Sibanda and others went with Dr. Masuka to Mchabez and in Caesar last October, if you recall, with the minister. And in that meeting, the minister himself said that we need solar at Mchabez. So these are the short-term goals, and in the context of a national budget, they are not much to do. They amount to, I think, less than $10 million, which is not a lot of money in the context of a national budget. It is critical that these short-term measures be done. And so I join that plea, and this is being televised. The plea to the Minister of Finance, to Dr. Masuka, to work closely with us to implement these short-term goals that will go a huge way towards giving us water security in the short term, so long as it rains adequately. So that's number one, the short term. The medium term has to be seen in the context of Glassblock Bopoma Dam, which is highlighted here. We all know that Glassblock Bopoma Dam was first identified as far back as 1988. Some of the luminaries of this council, Engineer George Mlilo, who was the principal engineer in the early 1990s, who I spoke to recently, and who, as we all know, subsequently went to the highest office in the civil service. He told me personally that Glassblock, he was given the choice between Glassblock and Mchabez in the early 1990s, and he wanted Glassblock. We don't have time to go into the reasons, but all I'm saying is that a succession of water engineers, the experts, the professionals, have identified that Glassblock is a critical dam for us to build. Turning to the point that Councillor Ndlovu made in this, I think it was Councillor Ndlovu, about finance. The reality is that we have the finance for Glassblock Bopoma. When the town clerk and I went to Morocco in December last year, we raised, in essence, the finance. All that we need now are two things. Firstly, we need to agree on the water offtake agreement. And secondly, we need to get a government guarantee, not to provide the money, but to guarantee that the international banks who will fund Glassblock Bopoma will be paid in US and will be paid on time. That is what we need for Glassblock. And if Glassblock is built, our medium-term needs will be addressed. Let me turn to the long term. And the long term obviously resides in Gwashangani Dam. And as we've all said repeatedly, we applaud government for developing Gwashangani. It is a wonderful long-term project. But as we all know, those of us who have spoken to qualified water engineers will tell you, the building of Gwashangani Dam itself is the easy engineering project. The more difficult engineering project is the construction and running of a 252-kilometer pipeline up ahead of 500 meters. And if you need any proof of that, look no further than Mthwakazi Dam, built in Masvingo province over, I think, 10 years ago, which has been full every season, designed for irrigation schemes downstream. In other words, not having to deal with gravity. And those have not been developed. In other words, it is clear that it was easy to build Mthwakazi. It's a lot more difficult to build the downstream from there. So what we are saying is that these are huge engineering tasks that will take hundreds of millions of dollars to achieve and to result in water actually being delivered to our city. Does that mean that we oppose Gwashangani? No, not at all. We totally support it. But we must be realistic in terms of our expectations of when we can expect water to be delivered. Tied to Gwashangani is, of course, the power that it will take to pump water 252 kilometers up ahead of 500 meters. A massive amount of power will be used. And if you need any illustration of how difficult that is, think of the challenges that we face just pumping water 40 kilometers from Nema. That gives us an indication of how difficult that task is. It's not that we're being negative about this. We want to work very closely with government. But in terms of delivering to residents we have to be realistic about how long and how much money it is going to take to make Gwashangani a reality, delivering water to our city. And so that is our long-term goal. But it further illustrates why we need Glass Block Bapoma Dam to be built as a matter of urgency, so that it acts as a stopgap to ensure that we have raw water until Gwashangani comes on board. The final and fourth point relates to the authority. Thankfully, we have a broad consensus, I believe, and if not a consensus, an overwhelming support. There may be those councillors who still have reservations, but it is critically important that the authority goes ahead. And Town Clerk, I understand we now have authority to go to Zambia. Councillors will be going to Zambia, to Lusaka, to see their own authority soon. And I trust that when you go and see how that authority is working, you will come back with more vigor. But the point I'm simply saying is this is, in my view, the broad, holistic plan that we have in those four phases: short-term, medium-term, long-term, and overarching that is the authority. But with those views, I hand back to the chair to respond.
Ngiyabonga Nkosi. Kukho konke lokho okungisele ukukhulumisa. Angila mazwi oku-eda, angila mazwi okusubtracta, kodwa ngibonga ukuthi amanzi ethu Bulawayo Omuhle ma-councillors lenkosi yethu laphana, amanzi ethu alahleka kakhulu, non-revenue water 46% lingananzelela, edinga around 4 million tisiyilungisa. Ama-pipes ethu amanzi abe sepontshiwe esetreatiwe. Nxa esesize ezindlini yikho hambe lahleka khona. Ama-pipe madala kakhulu. For example, sile pipe ekudisque ele more than 4 years. Sokungumthombo. Thina ngaze singasinga amanzi asila problem as a community eNtumbane Ntshuli. We take the amanzi. So konkeyana yikho kubona esizinda, we've got another problem. So yizo izinto ezidinga imali naleyo esingakwazi ukuthi maybe njoba ukhansela umoyo umeli ecele kuhulumeni ukuthi asincedise lo mayor wangezelela mhlawumbe sizayithola leyo mali yokurepair lawo ma-pipes. Ngiyabonga Your Worship.
Thank you. Can we move the report? Thank you. Would the Chair of Health Housing please deliver?
Your Worship, I move that the report of the Health, Housing and Education Committee meeting held on the 9th of September 2025 as submitted be received and the various recommendations contained therein be adopted.
Do we have a seconder for that? Thank you. Any debate?
Move the report.
Oh, sorry, ma'am. Yes. Which item, ma'am?
18.
18. 1-3.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to applaud and appreciate the efforts done by the Housing and Community Services in availing residential stands at Ruveve North and Mthwakazi yesterday. And this is in line with our city's policy that speaks of the right to give people to purchase residential stands. And also, I'd like to urge council to undertake small to medium projects on housing delivery in order to avail more stands or to the marginalized groups, people living with disabilities, the youth. And also, lastly, I would like to urge youth to get into forming cooperatives in order to be able to purchase stands, as our youth policy also speaks of supporting the youth. Thank you.
Any other debate? Thank you. Report is moved. Chair of Environment and Engineering, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I rise to move that the reports of the Environmental Management and Engineering Services Committee meeting held on the 15th of September 2025 is submitted, be received, and the various recommendations contained therein be adopted. Thank you.
Do we have a seconder? Thank you. Debate? No. Item 4. Anyone before? 1. You have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Item 1 on the attachment. Fire and ambulance section. I'd like to also upload the fire and ambulance section for its prompt and swift response when fire breaks out. This is in line with the council's policy whereby, according to the report, it's less than 10 minutes. So it's we really appreciate the effort that the fire and ambulance is hindering. So another point is one of the elements in it's one of the elements in trying to reduce the fire outbreaks, and our policy also speaks of trying to reduce the fires for safer spaces for our communities. And I would like to also engage the council to give awareness and advocate the community to also partake in keeping the environment to avoid fires. Thank you so much.
Councillor Mabuta, you're obviously too hungry. Ma'am, you have the floor. What item? Sorry? 18. Before? 4. You've got the floor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm rising as the duly elected councillor of Ward 2, fully mandated to act on behalf of residents. Your Worship, I am simply delivering a message from the residents. These residents fall into 3 categories. Category number 1 is a high-lying area and something is being done about them. They have not had water for about 3 years. Category number 2 has not had water for about 6 months. And then category number 3 has not had water for about 2 months. The challenge that we have been experiencing, Your Worship, is that even in an attempt to engage the department via the call center is doing its best. We cannot really accuse them of anything. However, Your Worship, I think that 2 months ago, we agreed that on a weekly basis, we should be having reports from the call center which will show us issues received and what is being done about them according to the reference number and aggregated in whichever manner is consumable to the generator of the information and the end user of that information. Now, Your Worship, that has not been happening, and it is a cause for concern, and we are inclined to think that perhaps people do not want to account in that manner because they have something to hide. Number 2, Your Worship, I think that it is unfair for a department or committee which has got a competent engineer as the chair of the committee, very competent, I'm very pleased with him, and then the director of that department, competent engineer again, I am so pleased with him. Even the assistant director, very competent, I am pleased with him. Now, my concern, Your Worship, is that the staffers in that department are doing a great disservice to the people that are actually leading this department. They are doing such a huge disservice because now, Your Worship, I think maybe the staffers need to also go to be taken for further training on how to communicate water problems. Because, Your Worship, honestly, we cannot have a situation where we need to ask before we're told that there's this issue which is obtaining. issues of that nature need to be communicated before we ask such questions, Your Worship. There is a thin line, Your Worship, between indifference and incompetence. And at this point in time, Your Worship, I don't know what is actually taking place there. Because even where you get the opportunity to interact with some staffers in that department, the level of indifference is appalling, Your Worship. It's actually tempting to think that maybe the staffers in that department have not bought into the vision of having a smart and transformative city, Your Worship. They have not bought into the motivation that is driving the chair of the committee and the director and assistant director. I feel that we need to get to a point where the staffers of that department actually understand that there is more to working than just waiting for payday. Because at this point, Your Worship, there are a lot of questions that I have asked in the direction of that department, and the 3 individuals that I have maintained are the only ones who have come to the party. When I interact with anyone else in that department, Your Worship, it is very sad. I think maybe we have pastors in this building that will pray for that department, but we also need, Your Worship, the 3 individuals that I've mentioned to actually speak to the staffers in that department, because those staffers, Your Worship, are such a huge letdown. You know, it is very disheartening to be dealing with the same issue every day. As I speak to you, Your Worship, I belong to the 3rd category where water supplies have been out for the past 2 months. And when you try engaging as a resident, you get an indifferent response. You come back and engage as a councillor, you still get that indifferent response. Now, residents of Ward 2 asked me to deliver this message, to say if the staffers in that department are no longer prepared to deliver water to areas like Richmond, Lobenville, Trines, North Lynn, and surrounding areas, they should put it in writing that they are not prepared to deliver water to those areas. And then those residents will then take it up with the 3 individuals that I have mentioned to then take decisive action on those staffers, Your Worship. I would have mentioned some of them, but I do not wish to subject them to the humiliation that comes with being called out in public. I respect them a lot, so I will not mention the underperforming ones. That's why I only mentioned the ones that I am pleased with, Your Worship. I hope and trust that fellow councillors will assist me because there are some individuals within the ward who have started saying that perhaps, you know, some of the engineers, since they are male, maybe they had girlfriends in the ward, and those girlfriends then broke up with them, and now we're suffering because of that. There are so many things that are being settled in the world. But I have been taking blows on behalf of this department, Your Worship. I hope maybe if I can appeal to the humanity in them, then they can maybe come and protect me as well. I've also asked them to come to the ward for site visits so that I can show them some of the problem areas for their attention. But that one is still pending, Your Worship. I don't know if they will eventually come, but I'm sincerely appealing to your office so that you can help me on this one, Your Worship. Because there are people in the ward who have said, Kuluma Lumea, he has done it in other words. That's what they say, Your Worship. So please,
Item 4. Same item Nkosi. Mina ngisoze ngibe mude futhi ngizakhuluma ngesintu ngoba isikhiwa kangisazi. Kodwa ngikhuluma ngento efanayo. Evikini lesithathu lika Ntulikazi ngomnyaka wona lo ka 2025 sasilomhlangano eWoodville Center labo manjinela bedorobho lona leli ababethunywe yibona laba abaqeda ukuqanjwa ngukhansila u-AR Moyo. Lami ngingumuntu ole problem yokuthi nxa mina senama categories amaningi. Thina manzi since 2013 kule ndawo ayengaphumi khona. 2015 kwangezeleleka, 2018 kwangezeleleka, 2020 kusiza kathesi. Now from Dryton, which is the first road into Woodville City, to 3rd Avenue, the last road into Woodville City where I stay and where it starts in Woodville North, which is yet to be constructed. Amanzi sephuma kuphela part of 3rd Avenue because the blockage has been going on. Lokhu iqhubeka. But angimelanga lapho kulitshela ngeblockage ukuthi iqhubeka kanjani. Engulandileyo ukuthi mhla welanga lele ndiqambayo sise Woodville Center engineer babekhona ababethunywe ngu-engineer Sibanda lo engineer Ncube basithembisa ukuthi njengoba wase kulabanye ukuthiwa ba-contractiwe to specifically look into i-Woodville, basithembisa ukuthi nge-2 months sonke sizaba sesilamanzi esephuma ezimpompini zethu. Ngemva kwe-2 months Nkosi sibe lo mhlangano ngokuswelakala kwenhlanhla kuvike ephelileyo laba babethunywe ukuqala kababuyanga. Ngicabanga ukuthi bebesesaba ukuthi bazabuya bazoyangeka ngamanga abachiya besitshele wona. But the problem yami is not only ngamangabo. I-problem yami yilokhu abasenza sikuzwe emzimbeni ngendlela yokuthenjiswa ngemva kokuthenjiswa amazwi. Your worship, we were engulfed with the feeling of juvenile exuberance because of the optimism that was built and brought to us. The same optimism that engulfs juveniles about life because they have energy. But because water in itself is life, that's why we were engulfed with the same feeling as the residents of Woodville. My humble plea is that can we be taken serious Woodville Nkosi? Asila mgwaqo. I-department le engineering ele roads labuya laza chinhlabathi ngo-April May ibuthelelwe. Lakathe silokhu njalo ayikadilizi ukuthi spread. Mina i-community yami ngabantu abadala ikakhulu iWoodville. Angeke ngibacele lokuthi bayichithize ngoba bafele emgwaqweni khonapho ngama-BP le-stress. Kunjalo kungela mgwaqo Nkosi. Utshani eWoodville lawo nje bungakufihla eceleni komgwaqo abuqunywa amanzi awakho. Umthetho ipolicy ye-city council ithi yona it provides housing not houses. Ngokukuzwisisa kwami using the leaky doorways of a school that I opened, housing means a cocktail of services that are brought together, amongst them clinics, roads, water delivery services, waste collection. Manje thina njengoba lesewage yangikhona silama septic tank Nkosi. Amanzi omele siwathola city council siwathola ngamabhawuza with the arrogant drivers that decide where to stop and where not to stop despite instructions. We have drivers that deliver water to their favorite persons, I don't know, because of the extension of promised conjugal requirements or because they are bribed. I am not in liberty to explain that because I don't know, but it is always a plausible suspicion that when a man goes to a yard where there are abundant women when they are not related, it is obvious in exchange for services that out of respect for the community I may not mention. But the trust in this thing, Your Worship, is that we are suffering. There's none of the city council services we are getting. This Bowser water we are getting is now water that we resort to use for washing and using for the toilet. So above paying for the services, we are not getting, Your Worship, because most of it becomes revenue water, gets lost elsewhere. We are buying water, and that is an expense to the residents of Woodville. Now Woodville Park has a similar problem. I honestly feel that this council, especially the department in question, requires a serious introspection and a shift in how things are being done. We call meetings abantu babuya ngama ISUs, ama single, ama double cab, ukuze sitshela thina ukuthi kuza kwenze njani. And I want to believe ukuthi imali lezo zama ISUs ngama red payers money. Yet you are not getting the service, Your Worship. And I've been talking about this. But in Woodville, until you bring roads, even in just Great Way like you do to other areas, until you bring water, until you come and cut grass like Ogubese town. Because Tina drop and Salandama gates, awako, government wallet. Salandamanzi, a clean, awako, as what told. Salandim Quaco, Ehamberayo. Ayikho kule mgwaqo ezilay ehambekayo. So it would voluntarily exempt from all rates. Lize libe serious ngayo ukuthi kathesi sifuna ukuyisevisa, and we are willing to contribute and pay our rates nxa selisevisi, because kathesi you are stealing from us. Even yona le land rate esiyibhadalayo edulayo ukuthi sibhadalela ama 3 hectares esihlezi kiwo ikhiphenini ngoba kakula ama services elwaletha. Abanye abantu be city council eWoodville city abakwazi ukuthi kunga nxa sisiza kuma meetings bayalahleka, but because the network is poor in Woodville, even ungamfakela ilocation kakwanisi ukuyivula. So we are literally emakhaya nkosi, yet we are paying services of being in town. Abantu be department le engineering umlima babusise ngochuku olenzakala eWoodville. I have been talking month in, month out. Okay. So, Nkosi, ngicela your intervention lo town clerk ukuthi li supervise abantu aba supervise abanye. Angithi ngoba the unsaid about this is that the whole department is failing. Yes, because if I'm not doing well and my supervisor is happy about my service, what does that mean to the supervisor? It means the supervisor is also not doing anything. And these are the same people who are queuing in town clerk's office befuna amaloni befuna na ezimoto ukuthi bahambe ngezimoto zezimali zethu thina singabhadala singabe ngabisa ama services. And Your Worship, this work as usual in this city council, as long as singashintshi kungela shift from this, we are going down the abyss slowly but surely and efficiently. Thank you.
What item, ma'am? You wanted to speak?
18.
Sorry?
Mine is 18.
18.
Oh.
We're not already done. Sorry, we've already. Just wait, ma'am. Are we not past 4? I was on 4. Okay.
I'm supposed to go 18.
I've done it fully.
Number 4. Yeah, 4. All right.
Wow.
Hello.
ngoba ngendapho selishila ngapha kulaba abasebenzela ngisini hamba ku-engineer ukuthi ngicela utshele i-department yakho ukuthi amanzi alahleka ngapha sebesikhala ukuthi amanzi awakho kodwa ngapha sekuvuza vale beyibo abatshiliye bezovala phana sekufunqa laphana bezokwazi ukuthi bezovala ipayipi yami bebuye the-second week bekwazi amanzi abuya namhla bezokhangela kani ukuthi bebe ngesikhathi sokuthi thina ngapha amanzi sewiki abantu bebe bethula amanzi sebevala sebenzisa amaphayiphi. So asikwazi ukuthi sicela ukuthi abantu abana behlale benjani bekustate ngoba ngeke ngafonela last week sicela i-engineer ukuthi abuye azovala amanzi waphaka bona kahle amanzi aphuma whole night. Ngaze ngafonela endlini ukuthi asabafanele. Mina ngapha ngiyalethisa izakhamizi ukuthi ukhathi kuyakubona okwenzakalana. Amanzi akhona nalapha esifika ngawo ukuthi siwadlalisayo. So bacela izakhamizi ukuthi sicela isinanzi. Khonokho okuncane kwakhona okukhona asikudlulise.
Anyone else on 4? Something, no? 15? Anyone between 4 and 15? Councillor, you've got the floor.
Thank you very much, Worship. I've got only one request to the department through you, Chairperson. Is can you direct the works who is responsible for what tender is resignation? Honest. I understand the frustrating procurement procedures, systems, whatever. But there are things that are not accepted. I've got a request dating back to 2023. Graduates. Inshallah, request, if you don't have a pressure, these are very Inshallah, so that your residents organize themselves, they spread that soil, so that the road is traveling. Are you trying to say from 2023 you don't have even one truck to provide residents of what 15 culture graduate for the others? That is why I'm demanding the director's resignation. It's clearly faith. Or are you trying to say you are also procuring that in Ghana? Please. I also raised it in our last budget meeting. How do I go make 2023 go to the budget meeting? We ask residents to pay rate. And there is nothing being done. We go back 2024, ask residents and propose a rate level on the road level. They pay that road level. You don't attend to this. 2025, last week, I just persuaded the residents to accept that budget. And next year, 2026, they will be also saying procurement. So, Chairperson, oil engineering, I'm serious. I'm very serious in Zundega. Running a fool, not director wako, ngiyentshela ama residents ka 15 utali full. So that nami batshela ukuthi babhadala ama rent. Because you can't tell me ukuthi angekwehlele ukudala inhlabathi kuphela. Sengizwisisile the right procurement challenge lapho. Isabela inhlabathi sikwaya you can't do that. It's totally unacceptable. That day I had a conversation with the finance director. He was saying what is collecting loan. But yes, it's fine when they are paying, they are not paying this because they are not seeing anything. How are you expecting residents to pay a rate for services that they do not pay? These issues that much I was talking about, can you go in a country plan?
Is it 27?
Yeah? No. Back up, why is my suspensions I was arranged? Take your issues there. You don't even want to go there yourself because it's a my so, Chairperson, now I'm going to stay as one motion. Chairperson.
Anyone on 15? Can I go to 18?
Mine is a concern. I just had a privilege of going to visit my grandmother over the weekend. On my way there, I saw most of our traffic lights. They are about to fall. So I was then imagining a situation when, in one of our committee meetings, council will be held responsible for any damages that can happen to anyone or any car that pole is going to fall on. So I was kindly asking the department, if they have, and they have staff, their junior staff, abahlala high density suburbs. Is they are traveling into town, even the low density suburbs, is they are traveling into town, maybe they can notice 1 or 2 or 3 traffic lights that are about to fall in the vehicle. Because the ones along, what you call, Old Camry Road, near White City. There are about 2 or 3 that are about to fall there. So you can imagine when they can fall on a child when they are crossing the road. It can be something which we don't want to imagine. So on their own, maybe if they can work on those, then we'll be fine. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you. Any other debate before what item, sir?
Yeah, thank you. Maybe before my chair responds.
Same item?
After everyone has spoken, before my chair responds.
Okay, I need to make a couple of...
Yes, I'm allowed to
defending. Let me just confirm that nobody else wants to contribute.
You are allowed. Yes.
Let's have order. No one else wants to contribute. So before I hand to Councillor Mabuta, I just want to make a couple of comments. Particularly to the two councillors who have so eloquently explained the problems faced. There are two problems about this meeting today and always in full council. The first is that it is televised. It's a good thing for transparency, but it goes way beyond our debates internally. Tied into that is that management doesn't have a right of reply. So what the public sees are your legitimate complaints, but there's no right of reply to our management staff, many of whom are diligent and work very hard. We need to always bear that in mind, in the interests of fairness and transparency. Having said that, let me deal with the two issues. The one of water. There is no doubt, Councillor, you've spoken about Woodville and enrichment. It seems to me that in every ward there are areas that fall into those categories. Either haven't had water in years or months or weeks. In every ward. For example, in Ward 4, right next to Criterion, there's Munda Drive. It never gets water. It's right next to Criterion, but it never gets water. And the reason, as explained to me, is because of gravity. It's right next to the pump station, so everything goes past it. But the point I'm making is that I don't think that there is a single ward which is exempt from this problem. What we need to do collectively, both on water and roads, is for individual councillors to come either one-on-one with the town clerk or the respective director. But at the very least, perhaps to take the time to write up what the major problems are in every ward. You say you've done it, Kudala, but it needs to be done collectively so that we prioritize in every ward. Where are the worst problems regarding both roads and water? How do we prioritize that right across the city? It means that we can't tackle everything, but we need to try and tackle the worst areas.
But Your Worship, can I interject?
Briefly, yes.
Your Worship, we have not had water in Woodville since 2013.
I understand
and we still don't have even 50 meters of water. We have a new pipeline in Woodville that connects Woodville North, and which we can still be connected to.
The same thing applies.
What is the problem with that?
Yeah, I understand that, sir. But the same thing, for example, applied in Pumula. You'll recall the example of Pumula, where that problem was identified. There were 49 houses in Pumula that had never had water, ever. And that problem was identified. We worked out a plan. And what I'm imploring all of us to do...
They never had water, so they don't know the comfort of having water. We have had water. We know what we are missing.
I understand, but we need to... What I'm saying, and bear in mind, Councillor, that I'm supportive of what you're saying. We're not fighting. Councillor, I'm looking at you. I'm supportive of you. I understand the frustration that you feel on behalf of your residents. But we will achieve this better if we can try to identify in every ward what the major problem is, and then see to try and understand why it is that that particular area has not got water and what needs to be done to address it. on both water and roads. So, Councillor, if we look at Kaji Park, you say some areas need gravel. We need to identify which roads need gravel. But you see, if you say all, we can't achieve all. We need to identify the worst.
But Your Worship, that's why we have two directors, a director and assistant. It is their job to do that with respect. We cannot come to full council here and give them the plan of works
I'm not saying
on how to perform the
I'm
activities.
saying outside of this meeting. But we need to progress. So I just wanted to make those points, that if we work together and identify the problems, I hope that we can address some of them. Okay. Councillor Mabuto, you wanted to respond before the chair.
Mayor, because I think we are slowly losing the direction of this meeting. Your Worship, I'm a member of the committee. And as a member of the committee, they say everything rises and falls on leadership. The issues which have been brought before the House by the policymakers are very pertinent. Town Clerk, there is a growing conflict between your management and your policymakers. There is noise in the cockpit. It's my 6th time now talking about this. It has to be sorted as a matter of urgency. The language now, it shows that the policymakers are very frustrated. That should not be the order of the day or the discussion which should be taking place in this august house. You are the chief accounting officer of this great city. You are the head of this council, Your Worship. And the house is on fire. Very soon, we will throw this city into serious chaos. The symptoms are already on the ground. I told you, Your Worship, Town Clerk, have a small workshop. Resolve the burning issues which are happening. Non-implementation of resolutions. Some are very simple resolutions, which we take blame even as a committee. We can't hide. That points to gross incompetence within the department. Town Clerk, you are the supervisor of these great directors which we have. Crack the whip on non-performing directors. Because if you don't do that, these policymakers are going to come after you. One who is not performing, Town Clerk, never hesitate, will support you 100%. Deal with the non-performing director. May not director used to say, Zwan, before my shareholders and I would know what exactly what I see on the city is on fire. We can't have a situation where our residents are now boycotting to pay their heads. These policymakers you see here are now subjected to serious humiliations. If you are to be in the council's resident group chats, these policymakers are called snails. They are bombarded left, right, and center. I don't want to mention a lot of things here, but we need to sort out this Town Clerk. Mayor, it's very important. We could be making a meaningful debate here, which benefits our residents, but there is noise in the cockpit. Let's sort out the mess.
Said most of the stuff, but I wish to steal a leaf from Councillor Moyo. Councillor Meli Moyo is gone out. My appeal, Your Worship, is to the government, Your Worship. We may fight and point fingers at each other, Your Worship, but if we do not have tools of trade, Your Worship, at times, Your Worship, it's difficult even for the best brains, for the best engineers in the country, in the city, to perform, Your Worship. I'm not defending any director whatsoever, but where my directors have done their job, Your Worship, you will see that it has been indeed done to perfection, Your Worship. So my appeal, Your Worship, is to the government, Your Worship. to avail us with enough resources, Your Worship. You can't give let's say a miner a fork, an eating fork to try and mine gold, Your Worship. So what I'm trying to say is, Your Worship, even though they may be lacking somehow, somewhere, but they don't have tools of trade. We have raised this, even the town clerk is my witness, Your Worship. Even the town clerk is my witness, Your Worship. These people, my directors, Your Worship, they lack tools of trade in most cases. But having said that, I note most of your concerns, my council, my fellow colleagues, and I respect them all. Thank you.
Can we move the report? Chair of Townlands, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that the report of the Townlands and Planning Committee meeting held on the 16th of September 2025 is submitted, be received, and the various recommendations contained therein be adopted.
Do we have a seconder? Thank you. Any debate? No debate. No debate. We move the report. I move that the report of the General Purposes Committee meeting held on the 22nd September be submitted as received and the various recommendations be adopted. Do I have a seconder for that? Do we have a seconder? Is there debate? Thank you. Let's wait a second. So we want to move the report? Yes. We haven't. We have now. Chair of Finance, please.
I move that the report of the Finance and Development Committee meeting held on the 23rd of September 2025 as submitted be received and the various recommendations contained therein be adopted.
Do we have a seconder? Do we have any debate?
Move.
My goodness, you must be hungry. Are we moving the report?
Yeah, it's all right.
Any notices of leave? Any notices of leave?
No.
Our meeting is adjourned.